Hello, ladies and gents! Thank God it's Friday, and that also means that it's tank review time once again. To close the week, today we will have a closer look at one of the Soviet medium tanks, although not one of the more popular ones actually. So, today on the menu is then the Tier 7 Soviet medium, the T-43. Now it's not to say that this would be really bad in any way, it is capable of dishing out quite some punishment actually, as you will also be able to see in the Ace Tanker gameplay coming up right behind the review. If you want to skip right ahead to that part, the usual timestamp awaits in the description below. And as for the rest of us, let's have a quick historical look at the successor of the legendary T-34. Now before you all get out the pitchforks, the T-43 was indeed not the actual successor of the T-34. That title actually goes to the T-34-85. It was meant to be, however, and I think it's quite interesting to see why. So, as we all well know, the T-34 was pretty much the backbone of the Red Army straight from its introduction, being highly mobile, almost impenetrable to the early German tank guns from the front, and easy to mass produce. As from mid-1942, however, Germany started to come up with a solution in the form of the brand new 75mm tank guns that could now easily deal with the T-34's armor, even at long range. The planned Soviet response was to come up with an improved version of the tank, combining an about 15 to 20mm thicker armor with the same mobility and gun that the T-34 already had. This would have been the T-43. But the prototype was delayed, and by the time they could finally start testing it in 1943, it turned out that they were not able to retain the originally planned mobility after all, and the armor was largely ineffective against the by then widespread German 88mm flak guns. Also, in the meantime, Soviet tank designers had to change their approach, when during the Battle of Kursk they had to realize that actually the largest weakness of the T-34 was in fact not its armor, but the fact that the 76mm gun that it used was incapable of dealing frontally with the newest German tanks, the Tiger and the Panther. In order to maximize productivity, they did decide to improve the existing T-34 model by applying a modified turret from the T-43 prototype and give it an 85mm gun. The result was the T-34-85 that proved to be quite successful. While the German forces had no trouble taking them out head-on, until they could get the job done, the Red Army really didn't care if they were knocked out by the dozen. They could manufacture them by the hundreds after all. Just to give you an idea about the differences, the German industry that put the weight on superior newer designs could put about 300 Panthers on the Eastern Front by mid-1944, while at the same time the Soviet mass production was churning out 1,200 T-34-85s every single month. Quite impressive, isn't it? But history lessons now over, let's continue by jumping straight to the numbers. Starting straight away with the gun, you have the staple Soviet 85mm tank gun at your disposal, which gives you quite a good punch with 180 average damage, but is a bit lacking in penetration with only 144mm of average pen. Now it has to be said that while this falls behind your Tier 7 competition, this will still be plenty for when you can actually play a solid flanking medium role. It really only struggles when you get jumped by higher tier mediums or if you try to engage heavies from the front. For those occasions, it's highly advised to bring some APCR rounds as well that have a much better 194mm at their disposal. What's a definite positive is that your rate of fire is actually fairly alright as well with over 11 rounds a minute, meaning that if you can pen your shells, with a good alpha damage you can actually rack up quite some damage quickly. This is also reflected by the quite healthy DPM of over 2000 damage per minute. That's actually one of the best at this tier. Now the other thing that's a little bit of a downside is actually the accuracy. While 0.35 meters is not exactly horrible, it's not as sharp as the other T7 mediums, and the bloom that you get from moving is actually worse than average as well. At least the aim time is on par with the others at 2.2 seconds, and gun depression is overall quite alright as well with 8 degrees. Moving on swiftly to the protection, you have 1100 hit points, which is somewhat on the lower side, although most of the other tier 7 mediums have quite similar HP as well. As for the armor itself, it's a bit middle of the road really, considering its competition, but at the end of the day you really shouldn't expect miracles. The turret has 90mm of armor all around, with some unfortunate weak spots on the turret cheeks on both sides. Here about 100mm of pen will be able to go through of it frontally, and alternatively a well-aimed shot at the cupola can already get through from 90mm onwards. The sides of the turret are actually quite nicely angled, so if you shoot it frontally there, it will most often be an auto bounce. The hull isn't amazing either, with only 75mm all around, although it's actually quite nicely angled in places. Like in the front, for example, so the upper plate has actually about 110mm of effective armor. The lower plate is even better, with 120mm of effective armor. The sides, however, are totally flat and without any spaced armor, so this is actually the weakest part of the machine, with the bare 75mm of protection only. And finally, the back has actually some serious angling going on once again, so here you need again about 100mm of pen. All in all, the armor is really functional at best, with the occasional bounce against lower tiered opponents. Same and higher tiered guns won't really have any problem getting through it though. Next up, it's the mobility, and once again we are kinda middle of the road really. The top speed limit of 51 km per hour is quite nice, but it's also kinda expected as well, and the power to weight ratio of 17 horsepower per ton is really average only. Unfortunately, things are not really looking up with the terrain resistances either, which are actually worse than most of what the competition has, so while this thing can get around, it almost never feels really nimble. On the upside, the traverse speeds are quite comfortable, even if again, nothing exceptional. 48 degrees per second on your turret and 38 degrees on your hull will do in most occasions though. And finally, the camo values, while not available on Tanks.gg, are actually almost the same as on the KV-13, so it's decent but nothing light tank-like of course. View range and radio range fall behind the competition however. The 370 meters view range is still not too bad, but the under 550 meters radio range is a bit embarrassing really at tier 7. So, just to sum it up, what do we have then with the T-43? A decent, overall quite well-rounded medium without any major strengths or weaknesses really. It didn't leave much of an impression on me, especially after coming from the T-34-85 that can be a real beast at its tier. It's not bad though, so just stick to the usual medium role, meaning flanking and supporting, and you should do just fine in it. Equipment-wise, the gunrammer and vents combination is pretty standard and highly suggested. The third slot is a bit more debatable. I personally use the gunlaying drive, which is a bit questionable with 2.3 seconds base reload, and overall I think the largest benefit would be probably using coated optics or binoculars. Crew skill wise, I would highly suggest starting with 6th Sense, Snapshot, Smooth Ride and Wet Stowage, followed by Brothers in Arms for the second skill, and then working on view range skills like Situational Awareness or Recon, Clutch Braking, and probably also you could think about throwing in some repairs. So, overall not so impressive you might say? Well, that may be the case, but that doesn't mean that you can't get some damage done. Check this out. Alright, so here we go, T-43, Ruinberg standard match. And looking at the matchmaking, oh my god, what fresh hell is this? Well actually, it's really a good news bad news kind of situation. Good news is, we are top tier, yay! The bad news is, well, there are 23 heavy tanks in this match. Both of the teams have exactly one medium, which is us on our side, 2 SPGs, and actually we have one more heavy, and the enemy has a Jagdpanther. Now probably, while it's a city map, artillery will have a field day if they know how to position themselves. Ourselves, we have to play this carefully. So what do? Well, we can't go to the city, it will be swarming with heavy tanks. and the corners will be super busy as well. So supporting the heavies directly will be a little bit tricky. Now what I decided to do is I will go and try to spot this upper little village right from the zero line while carefully moving forward to see if there is any heavy push coming on this side as well, or if most of the heavies will go to the city, in which case we should have some free reign here. The plan is, if I don't see any real opposition, and so far quite a lot of the heavies have been already spotted in the city, then we can move to the E line and shoot down into the city while also remaining in artillery cover. So far it's quite quiet, which means we can slowly start to progress forward, although I have to say I usually do this a little bit too early. It's just the patience gets me most of the time. But I'm here to shoot some tanks, so let's get some things going. Now it will be really important that I get the sides of these heavies, and shooting right from here, from behind that corner house, where you also have some bushes for some extra protection, is actually a really nice thing to do. There we go. And with a bit of luck we should have the sides of some heavies really soon. Also, if you don't move too forward as I do right now, you are even in artillery cover, so that's a pretty strong position. But suddenly, base camping tiger. Oh boy, he just bounced a lucky shot there. Quick returning fire, but we have to get off the radar as quick as possible. There are 2 artilleries on the enemy team, and we are pretty much the only visible target for them that's not in the city. So I think they would be quite interested. Now I started to move forward, but then I realized, what the hell am I doing? Really, I should be going up, get into a better position while remaining unspotted, and then continue with my plan to snipe into the city. I must keep my health, I must remain undetected, and I must shoot their sides. I don't have any APCR in this match, so it has to be all skill. Oh, and that's a very unfortunate IS. Tracked sideways on. He should still be there with a little bit of luck. And indeed he is. Can we finish him off? Nice. That's 1 heavy tank down. Only a couple dozen more to go. Seems our base camping friend decided to move down as well, and then suddenly the enemy T-43 pops up behind us now. That guy didn't spot us until now, but I think he did now, so let's move. It's the move and shoot kind of basic tactic, hopefully dodging some return shots, and actually we have managed to dodge all of it. Now that guy tries to shoot on the move. That's something that this machine is really bad at. So the slowly moving forward, aiming and shooting will be a lot more effective, but you will still miss occasionally, than if we would be just clicking the auto aim on and then trying to hit him on the move. Won't happen, don't go there. Right, so enemy medium is down. Luckily we have also not been sent into oblivion by an artillery shell. However, we are down by 4 tanks, and that's really not good news. Now, we have the back of the IS, we managed to snipe on him. We have to take this guy out so we can go and help the others in the city. I will take a shot here, which is fair enough. Can I track him? No, but I get a really nice campfire going. That's what we like to see, burning heavy tanks. Nom nom nom. Now I actually missed an opportunity here. You can shoot between a lot of these houses on Ruinberg, and these 2 are no exception. Instead I try to get a cheeky shot in here in the beginning, not quite, but we managed to do it before he gets the return shot off, so IS is down. Now, sitting here could work if we keep our distance, but while take chances when we can just advance a little bit closer so we can have also better shots and use these bushes on the road. And this is something that you might have seen also in one of the Good or Bad series. The Tiger P, lucky for us, gets tracked, and that means now we should have plenty of time to double track him as well. And with the rate of fire, remember the base rate of fire is over 11 rounds a minute, we can keep this guy tracked and sideways onto us even if we miss one shell. And there we go. And that poor guy can do nothing. And we can take all his health without being really in danger ourselves. In the meantime, the heavies did some really good work in the city as well, so we are actually now going by one. But as I say, that was a little bit too early. The T-29 takes out one of the Tigers, and that means we are still neck and neck. Luckily it's only one heavy tank left, and the two artillery are still up and running. Now, where could that T-29 be? The Tiger P didn't spot him, so there is a really good chance that he is coming down that narrow road where all the enemy heavies died, and that he will pop out on this corner quite soon now. I did mistime it. The plan was to quickly spot him, then make sure that I can get some side shots going, but I mistimed my movement and I got spotted and caught out in the corner. He did see me hide behind the corner. There is really no reason to move forward when he is aiming there and take another shot in the face. We can just leave him to our comrades who can finish that guy off. Don't take unnecessary chances, this game is still not won. We are hunting artillery, and it would be really a shame to lose because we get blasted by them. There is a really good chance that they will still be in base because, hey, it's artillery. Not this time though. So I try to get some nice shots on these guys as soon as they are lit up by the Tiger P, but there is nothing that has been revealed, which is probably a good indication that they are not there. Artillery has a really good camo most of the time, but they should have been popping up on the radar already, so it might be that they either moved up to around A9, A0, or they could be actually trying to slip through the city, so let's make sure that they can't get away unpunished, and indeed, there is the gorilla. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have 6 cents at the time, if I'm not mistaken, trying to make some shots happening. But the gorilla has disappeared. Where could the big guy be then? GW Panther? Oh, there he is. Let's get some clean shots going. And, ooh, there is the gorilla. He did actually circle around and come back. This is really bad. He managed to snap one shot off and goodbye. Outplayed, my friend. The gorilla has a really narrow gun arc, so slipping by next to him meant that he was unable to do anything about us. So, the odds might not have been in our favor in this match, but with some basic tactics we could get a decent result out of it anyway. I mean, getting a high caliber award in such a heavy tank infested matchmaking is not too bad. Over 3700 damage and 5 kills are then our final scores, getting us a nice 1300 base experience game. Though it has to be said as well that the next two players in the Porsche and Henschel Tigers had some pretty great games as well. Overall we fired 32 shots, 26 of which hit and 22 of those penetrated as well. The gun, while not amazing, is absolutely adequate, well, right up until we want to go head to head with the heavies, of course. Now all this damage was achieved without firing a single APCR round, which by the way also meant that we closed the match with a lovely 45,000 credit profit. Alright, this was then my take on the T-43, the Soviet Tier 7 medium tank. I hope that you found this little review useful, and if you did, thanks a lot for considering giving this a like or sharing it. Thank you very much for watching, enjoy your weekend, and I look forward to seeing you again next week as well.